Adam Napper from Farrow Jamieson here for another FJ chat. Now today I've got Giles Pearson with me from Accountests, who you'll find all about in a minute. But good afternoon, Giles.
Hi, Adam.
Now what we're going to do today, Giles, is just going to explain to us the Accountests product, which is testing specifically for accounting and financial roles, which I personally have been using for some of the roles I've been recruiting and has been warmly received by my clients. So Giles is a director of the business, one of two directors based in New Zealand. So I'll hand over to Giles. So just tell us firstly, who are you and how did the idea of Accountests come about?
Sure. So look, Accountests is started off with myself and Steve Evans. So I'm the accounting part of that.
Yeah.
I'm 18 years as a partner with PwC. Finished on 30 June this year, a couple of months overseas, and come back to really hit the business with Steve. Steve's background is in testing and assessment.
Yeah.
So he's been running the business probably for the last 18 months, which has been pretty tough for him without me really being able to be involved that much. But as a concept, I guess it started from discussions that he and I had several years ago that the frustrations both within PwC and within our client base of people looking to hire accountants, being able to use a good recruitment process, so good structured interviews, good reference checking, doing testing around psych testing, ability testing, numerical verbal reasoning testing. But struggling to work out how to test those technical competency skills.
Yeah.
Look, we had issues within PwC from time to time, and certainly clients had issues with hiring people who looked, by all intents and purposes, looked absolutely fine. Their CVs stacked up. Tough to work out, whether the CV really describes what their capability is. You get them in role, and several months down the track, you actually find out that they just can't perform. And look, if you're unlucky, you then have to call in a PwC or a KPMG or whatever to fix up the hole that they've created.
Yeah.
So that was the frustration. And
there was no tool on the market at the time to really assess those core financial accounting skills?
No, we looked all over the world, and look, in New Zealand and Australia, really nothing. In the UK, very little. In the US, there are some accounting test products. They're pretty US specific.
Yeah.
A lot of them are pretty old, and a lot of them are, I guess, very textbook based. So they're not tests that have been written by people who've got practical experience out there advising clients and knowing what are the questions that your staff in a CA firm or the accountants out in industry, what are the questions that they're having to grapple with. So I guess to be fair, I got to see that on both ends because I knew the questions that the accountants in industry were asking us. And the stuff that they were struggling with, and clearly knew what our guys within PwC were having to deal with. So we were looking at that and going, we want a test that's got some integrity to it. We want a test that is country specific, and is current. So I guess our challenge to ourselves was to then build something which had all of those elements in it and was a massive step up from all the other things that you could do, and hopefully we've achieved that with Accountests.
So we've got the visuals behind us. So this is Accountests website behind us. I'm just going to drive it a little bit, and obviously
Sure.
Giles can talk us through it. So we've got the About Us screen there, which really just sort of outlines everything you've discussed in terms of who you guys are. The important bit, of course, is the tests, which is what your business is all about. So there you've got 5 tests currently.
So we've got 5 tests for New Zealand.
Yeah.
I guess what we were looking at trying to do was to get some generalist tests up there. So there's a CA test, so a test that's suitable for roles where job description says this person needs to be a chartered accountant, whether that be a member of CANS or CPA or whatever.
And this is whether they're working in a chartered accounting firm or in
So this
industry?
this is more about the job description, but it is a generalist test. So it basically is in 4 bits. It's covering financial accounting, tax, management accounting, and costing.
Yeah.
To my mind, certainly within a public practice environment, with Xero and the need of firms to become much more advisory focused, all of those skills are now required of people in public practice. So you can't rely on financial accounting and tax. You need to know management and costing, because clients are, that's how you're going to add value to clients, by being able to help them with their management reporting a lot more. Yeah. So I think that's valid in a public practice context. I think in a smaller corporate or a private firm for an accountant, I think that's equally valid, because they're having to deal with everything. So they're having to prepare financial statements, deal with tax issues, and deal with management reporting. The tax stuff is very much focused around things that, in my view anyway, people in industry would be expected to know. So the questions
bring up, because you can there's actually a couple of sample questions if we click.
There are a couple of sample questions.
Where do we find those? Try some example questions here. So they it's a good indication. You can actually go in and actually have a look at what sort of questions.
So you get a feel for how the site works, and the sorts of questions that you're going to have to deal with.
Should we test your knowledge?
So the good thing about these ones is when you click on an answer, it will actually tell you whether you got it right or not, which clearly in the test themselves it doesn't do that.
So financial accounting is, you probably won't need to read this, you are holding some forward exchange contracts at year end to cover debtors and inventory. No payment was made to enter into the contracts. Under New Zealand's IFRS, how should these be valued for accounting purposes? And obviously you've got 5, so it's multiple choice, 5 possible answers. Cost, mark to market adjusted for the forward points in the contract, at the expected forward rate when delivered, or at the expected forward rate when taken out. Now, I'm not an accountant, I wouldn't have a clue what the answer is.
Yeah.
But that's what the product's for, isn't it?
Well, that's right. Look, and these are that's probably indicative that the questions are not easy.
Yeah.
So anybody who's looking at this, who is an accountant, would look at that and go, look, I actually have to think about that.
But they'd have a fairly good idea, possibly.
But if you're working for an accounting firm at a CA level, or if you're working in industry and having to prepare financial statements that comply with the reporting standards, this is not an unusual question. So you can have a click on that and see whether you can get it right.
Hang on, here we go. So I'll have a complete stab in the dark. False,
and that says no.
So this is only on the example questions.
This is only on the example questions. In the test itself, you make a choice and then you just move on to the next question.
That was the one I was actually going to do.
So mark to market is the right answer, and the website just gives you a little blurb as to why it's the right answer. But again, that's just for these examples.
So the actual tests that the candidates set, Giles, it's 30 minutes. 40 questions of this format.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's reason, look, it's not easy, but as part of the reporting that an employer gets out of this, you get a slice and dice. Actually, you could bring up you could have a look at the sample report. So if you just go into the test information, go right down to the bottom. And there's a sample report down there. Click on the sample report.
Here we go. Yeah. So this is what you actually get.
So this is what the employer gets for their money.
So it's 8 pages.
So if you scroll down there, there's a whole lot of stuff that tells you how the report works. That's the little graph that is probably, as an employer, is the thing you really want to look at.
Where are they sit on the percentile?
So lots of people have sat this test, and we've put that into a statistical model which tells you what the bell curve is, so that's the bell curve, and you can tell where your candidate is. So the fact that the tests are really hard, it then becomes irrelevant, because the bell curve just obviously adjusts to reflect.
It's hard for everyone.
Absolutely, it's hard for everyone.
Yeah.
I think the other thing employers need to think about with that is, for the chartered accounting test, half the people are going to be below the peak of the bell curve.
Which doesn't mean they're a bad person.
It doesn't mean they're no good, but it does mean that if this is a job for a chartered accountant where your expectation is that they don't have much experience beyond having got their qualification, you might well expect that they'll be below the median. And that may well be absolutely fine for that role. If you're recruiting for a CFO...
And it breaks it down, of course, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you've got basic, intermediate and advanced. So you may well have someone that scores strongly basic, fairly well on intermediate, but maybe more poorly on advanced. But for that type of role, that could be
so that gives you a slice and dice. And if you push down to the next page, that then splits it between the financial, tax, management and costing, and you can see how they did on each of those questions. Yeah. So if the role has no tax requirement, you might not be that worried about, and they actually scored poorly on tax but well on everything else, then you'd go, look, that's fine.
And then you break down each individual question, right or wrong, don't you?
So these are clearly not the questions there, but it gives you an indication of what the question was asking, which section it came from, whether it be financial or tax or whatever.
And intermediate, basic or advanced.
What sort of, how difficult it was and whether they got it right or not. And look, that's just giving you as the employer as much information as you could possibly want about where they did well, and it also tells you if they didn't attempt a question.
Right.
And so one of these things obviously is if people don't finish the test but do very well in what they do finish, there's another pointer. This person actually works methodically, gets the right answer, but it takes them a bit of time.
But it could tell you something about someone that doesn't attempt an answer at what is a 20% chance of getting it right.
Look, I think it allows you as either the recruiter in your case or as the employer to have a think about that.
Yeah.
And
can tell you something about the person, can't it?
And I guess in particular, if they do quite poorly on the test, what that tells you is that if they've got other skills that mean that they're still in the running for the role, you might need to ask a whole lot more questions, think carefully about the reference checking, know that when they come into the role their technical skills are maybe not going to be that great, so put some cover around them early. Get your external accountant to come in and just sort of touch base with them every couple of weeks for the first 3 or 4 months, just to make sure that they're getting all the things done that they should be and stuff's not sliding, or in a public practice environment that the manager who's going to look after that person or the partner just needs to have that bit of extra time. Maybe they need to get some exposure to some different things, or get sent on some courses or whatever, but you are forewarned.
Years for development, really, is what you've got to them,
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Now let's just go back to because you've got, we'll just scroll back here to the test, Giles. So it's five tests at the moment, isn't it? Bookkeeping, the CA test, which we've just been discussing in some depth.
Yeah.
Part the non-qualified accountant, which I've actually used for a few of my clients for sort of an assistant accountant role.
Yeah.
Cost accounting and management accounting. Yeah. So there's 5 of them at the moment, depending on the level that you need to test.
So just to, I guess, talk about each of those. So the chartered accounting one we've talked about, the non-qualified, or what I'd call qualified by experience test, is for people who would call themselves an accountant, but the role doesn't require them to be a chartered accountant. It's structured exactly the same way as the chartered accountant test, but the questions are a bit easier.
Yeah.
The bookkeeper test is very much for a role where perhaps they're an office manager, they're going to have to do the books as part of that role. You want to know that they actually have an understanding of double entry bookkeeping, and then the test teases out how much value they're going to add to your business. Can they push stuff around in Xero, but they really don't understand the outputs? Will they be able to look at the outputs and know when stuff isn't right and that they've made a mistake somewhere? Can they do things like work out margins and do pricing and that sort of thing? So there's a little bit of numerical reasoning in there.
Quickly, obviously there's a bit of crossover potentially with those, isn't there? Cost accounting and management accounting. Cost accounting, I'm assuming, is tailored more for specific, not just manufacturing.
So these were, I guess, from the point of view for a corporate, may well have a job which is a management accounting role or a cost accounting role. Those general tests are not that much help for that. So what we wanted to do was develop a management accounting and a cost accounting test that just cover those areas.
Yeah.
I guess what it means is those tests are international, because clearly you don't really have a country-specific issue. We've done them using sort of US English terminology, just because the people in the US tend to like to, that we can all work that out, but they might well struggle with proper English, if you like. So those are international tests and focused on those particular roles. The cost accounting one's not a big seller in the New Zealand market, but when you go to the US and you've got sort of big manufacturing companies, then that's what that's tailored for.
Yeah, okay. And it's got obviously the pricing on here, and I've purchased several myself directly off the website. It's very, very easy to purchase the test. All you need is a credit card and you're away basically.
Yep.
From the candidate's perspective, I've dealt with a number of candidates that have sat these tests. Very user friendly, very straightforward. When they complete the test, as the person that administers the test, you get an email straight away saying they've completed the test, and you can go in straight away and view the report, can't you?
Yep.
From my perspective, the client, it's made my client's selection process much easier and much clearer. And I've had people obviously both into processes and offered, and some that are out of processes. But at the end of the day, that's what we're looking to assess here. We are looking to assess their core competencies. Are they a good accountant? And are they suitable for the job that we're looking at them?
Yeah.
So obviously, in terms of pricing, there's a few options you can play with depending on volumes and.
Yeah, as with anything, the more you buy, the lower the price becomes, and there's another page on there which gives you all the details of how that works. But,
okay. And your current customers, obviously, direct to employers and recruitment companies?
Yep, recruitment firms, so public practice firms, so those are and corporates. Those would be our key markets. We're also working with government departments, local authorities, so that's another area. So look, to be honest, what we'd really like to do is get to the point where even a Ma and Pa business who was looking to hire a bookkeeper, or slightly larger business that was looking to hire an accountant would look to use these tests.
Yeah.
That means they need to know that these things are even possible, and we're not at that point yet.
Yeah, and obviously the costing obviously off the street here is $200 excluding GST, which if you compare it to psychometric testing, for instance, which can be 4 or 5 times the cost of that, and you're sort of cutting to the chase here in terms of what you're assessing, aren't you?
Yeah.
All right. Well, obviously the website's here. It's www.accountests.com, which has got all the information on there, including how to get hold of you guys. But it's definitely a product that I think is definitely making people's lives easier in terms of hiring accountants. So,
thanks for that. And that's certainly our goal. That's certainly our goal. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, Giles. And yes, the website's here. That's where we've had it, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more of you.
Great. Thanks,
Thank
Adam.
you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
you.